This is Wretched Radio with Todd Friel.
The rather sophisticated Todd Friel. This is Wretched Radio. I'm going to see a musical. A Handel, he didn't just write the Messiah. He tended to write big themed pieces. Israel in Egypt. Get to go see that sometime soon. Can't remember exactly when, but going to go see it. Apparently it is on par with Messiah. It's just as good, telling the story, of course, of the Jewish people in exile in Egypt. And I share that with you just so you think that I sound more smarterer than I actually am. But speaking of exile, Rod Dreher for the AmericanConservative.com had an interview with Reverend Peter Sandlin, a vicar in the evangelical wing of the Church of England. There are some good brothers there in the evangelical wing of the Church of England. I know a few of them. And this fellow basically is saying, Christian, get ready. Your life is going to be in exile. Get ready. The church is going into exile, and you would do well to prepare for it. Now, please remember, this is just the observation of one vicar in Great Britain. But when we look at Great Britain, we can see what is likely to come to America. Not definitely. There are differences. But at the same time, that country, which was formed very similarly with Christian values. After all, they have a little something called the Magna Carta. They have a document that is supposed to define how things are to run, and that the Church of England was always to be the state-sanctioned religion. It's unfolding. And they are a little bit ahead of us, but not by much. The church in our Western nations have already hit the iceberg, says the young vicar. Water is flooding into the hull. The ship will sink. Yikes. The grinding judders of our ship impacting the iceberg have been felt, but the majority of Christians will do what the Titanic passengers and crew did: explain the evidence away and refuse to help one another to prepare to save one another's spiritual lives. Is that the future of the church in the West? Now, please note, we all know that the gates of hell will not prevail over the church. Progressivism, intersectionality, postmodernism, secular humanism, it is not going to prevail against the church. It's not ultimately going to sink, but it sure does appear to be changing. And he cites story after story. And, I've got him here, too, all day, every day. Okay, for instance, here's one for you. From National Review, Georgia's colleges are suppressing Christian speech. Happens to be an article talking about the free speech zones, which is kind of funny because if you have to be told where to go and what time to do it, it's not really free speech. Nevertheless, there's a piece of legislation in Georgia called SB 339. It is designed to talk about what can be said and what can't be said, where it can be said on university campuses. So according to National Review, they're saying that the universities have managed to gut core protections against free speech and getting those free speech zones out of the campuses. In other words, they want to keep them there. Should the Georgia State House fail to restore those protections, nobody's speech will be safe on Georgia's public college campuses. That's Georgia, y'all. That's the buckle of the Bible Belt. Doesn't get any more Christian than the state of Georgia. Free speech zones to shut down Christian speech, which, let's be honest, that's what this is about. Another sign, and they're just everywhere. Bake shops, dress shops. It doesn't matter what the shop is. If you do not toe the new societal definition of what is moral, we'll just shut you down. When is that war going to end, by the way? When is that going to stop? Everybody threatening everybody. You do this or we'll do that, and you're going to be threatened about this, and you're going to do that. If I recall, the whole idea, Joey, maybe this rings a bell to you, boycott. We did a study on this a long time ago. There was actually somebody named Boycott, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he was a big landowner that everyone just kind of unified against.
So they boycotted him.
Yeah, I think it was kind of a union-esque kind of an ordeal.
Oh, unions have always got something to do with boycotts. They played a big role in it in our culture, but frankly, so did evangelicals. We were pretty quick to threaten boycotts. What are we going to use to coerce people to say Merry Christmas when we're no longer the majority? Just wondering. Nevertheless, the signs of the times, they're everywhere. We've hit the iceberg, according to a vicar in Great Britain. The iceberg that has ripped open the church is composed of not frozen water, but three things. Here they are. 1, radical sexual gender ideologies, Islam, and government's totalitarian instincts. Don't you worry. The more godless a society becomes, the more evilly they behave. And wow, are we seeing evil behavior. Just read a story of it. 2 guys with AIDS kidnapping a 12-year-old boy to rape him. And I think we can just expect more and more of that. So what is a society to do? If people cannot control themselves internally, then we need an external mechanism, and we'll happily lay down our liberties and our rights for the sake of protection. And we're already seeing that, aren't we? The Founding Fathers, they understood this. They got this very right, that a godly people is required for a liberty-based system. Without that internal mechanism of control, the state's going to crack down. Britain secularized 20 to 30 years before the USA. I thought this was interesting from the vicar. When Ronald Reagan talked about his faith, it was viewed as bizarre in England. Remember that? Today, the political commendations of Billy Graham given in America would not be given in England. This means that we now have people in leadership positions who had their entire schooling and formative lives out under a regime of full-blooded acceptance of radical deconstructionist ideologies. This is important. British people in their 60s recall that when they were 20, many people thought Christians were just ignorant, but evil and dangerous due to their inability. Now, they thought they were just ignorant back then because they were unscientific. Today, people in their 20s, they think that Christians are not just, they think we're dangerous, evil, because of our inability to commend the radical sexual ideologies, Islam, and further government control of life's details. Christians are now seen like that in Great Britain. Tell me we aren't being seen like that increasingly in America. And therefore, evil people, and Christians are that, evil people must be silenced, protected from themselves, and prevented from infecting others with their beliefs. That's where he thinks Great Britain is gone. And he suggests that America is not far behind, nor is Canada. Canada's maybe actually a little bit closer to England than America at this point. This is where it appears that we are headed, church. Thankfully, we've got a book in the Bible that helps us to navigate through these icy waters. Nevertheless, I think we need to recognize this country's changing. This country is different than it once was. And rather than having a Norman Rockwell vision of what it was, and we just need to get back there, it seems to me we need to ask ourselves the question, why was it there? And the answer was, it was because it was mostly developed by and lived by a group of people that was mostly influenced by the church. It's just not the case anymore. So how do people want to live in Norman Rockwell world? Well, if there was such a place, it's not from forced morality. It's a heart change issue. You need to be about the gospel. He writes, the UK is ahead of the USA in seeking to use state apparatus to enforce cultural norms that would be rejected by American libertarians. Such moves are done with the support of many in the British population. Os Guinness wrote a book, The Gravedigger File. And he argued that cultures which were once deeply shaped by Christian beliefs turn upon them with a deeper ferocity than cultures that never had them. Uh-oh. Do you know in Great Britain, according to this vicar, this is the way that he put it in Great Britain, that people on the right, like Theresa May, they'd be considered Democrats in America. And those that are in the Labor Party are like way wonky left. Theresa May, the daughter of an Anglican cleric, tweeted this, on the final day of LGBT plus History Month, it's important to remember that LGBTQ history is all our history. LGBTQ's success is everyone's success, and LGBTQ's rights are human rights. That's from the right. How now shall we live? One of the things that this fellow recommends, start reading about persecuted peoples. Try the book of Daniel, try the book of Ezekiel. Start reading about what it's like to not get hired, to not be able to find work, to not go to university, to not be certified by the government for nonprofit exemption status. Get ready, he says, because it is coming. He talks about a book, Confessing Church from Weimar, Germany. You can read about it in For the Soul of the People. You can also read The Whispers, Private Life in Stalin's Russia, because he claims that is where we are heading. So I just have a question for you. Is this at all on your radar? Family? Church? This is Wretched Radio. Don't forget, if you would like to hear the entire daily broadcast, simply visit wretched.org, go to iTunes, figure out your favorite Android listening platform, and you can listen to the entire program every single day, downloaded to your listening device for free. Well, thanks to our monthly supporters called the Gospel Partners. If you'd like to partner with us, we'd be very, very grateful. Simply visit wretched.org.